goddamn. Hold on, man. Hold on. I gotta get my shit together. Holy shit. Okay. Week 1. Almost in the books. We got 2 games today and 1 game tomorrow. South Carolina, Virginia Tech coming up at 3. Notre Dame and Miami tonight in prime time, and then TCU, North Carolina tomorrow. So there will be another scaled down version of this video Tuesday. And some of the segments that we normally do here on the Your Season is Over video will have to wait till Tuesday. For instance, the We're Back list. Miami, a prominent member of the We're Back list for a long time. They haven't played yet, so can't update the We're Back list. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the games we've already seen. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Tuesday, I'll come back on with another sort of smaller version of the Your Season is Over video and wrap up Sunday and Monday games. But anyway, welcome to the Your Season is Over video, Week 1 edition. Man, what an amazing 3 days of games we've had. Point and laugh specials that some of us didn't see coming. Some maybe that we did, but definitely some that we didn't. Unbelievable 3 days of college football. Unbelievable. All right, y'all know what this is. Welcome to the Your Season is Over video. If you're looking for some sort of video to tell you how good your team played yesterday, how good some player looked, congratulate you for beating some G5 or FCS team by 50, this is not the video for you. If you're new to this channel, we do a wrap-up video every Sunday that's different than any other wrap-up video out there. There's a million places you can go to hear about teams that look good, players that look good, big wins, all that kind of crap. We don't do that here. This is the Point and Laugh special. We point and laugh and talk about losers. Who embarrassed themselves, who lost, who got upset. A couple of segments we'll throw in at the end. Best teams, best players, Heisman list, Josh Pate special. Boy, Josh Pate's coming on at 1 o'clock today. What's he doing? You know why Josh Pate changed his Sunday show to 1 o'clock? Because I always do my Your Season is Over video Sunday afternoon before his show. And remember last year, I came on here and I told you exactly what Josh Pate was going to do on his nighttime show. Ruined it. So he's moved his Sunday show up to 1 o'clock today. But anyway, I'm recording this at 11 in the morning. I'm going to tell you what he's going to talk about. But you already know, if you know what we did last with Josh Pate special, you know who he's going to highlight today. But anyway, I've got here the Your Season is Over list. A couple of other teams that lost that I decided not to put their helmets over here. I'll talk about those briefly and tell you, why I didn't put the helmets over there. But we've got the Your Season is Over list of teams that lost. We've got a list of teams that won. Normally I do a list that's like, these are the teams that won and I thought they looked really good doing it. And then there's another list, teams that won, but I thought they looked really bad doing it. Little bit different this week because you had a lot of high-level teams playing very inferior competition. So I still have that list that I'm going to go through, but it's more like, okay, this team did about what I thought they should do against this low-level team. And then it's another list of, okay, they didn't exactly dominate like maybe I thought they should, right? So we'll do that. What else do we have? Glad you asked. Most impressive teams I've seen so far through week 0 and almost all of week 1. I'll give you a Heisman list, even though it's ridiculously early. And you probably, if you had a Heisman list in the preseason, you probably shouldn't change it after just the first game. Heismans are not won or lost in week 0 or week 1. But with that being said, I have a little bit of a change to mine. Even though I know it's a bad idea. We got the Juice Poot special coming up. Paper plate special. I don't remember if we did this last year. I know I've done it in years past. I'm bringing this back. The paper plate special. You know what that is? You push the paper plate out onto the 50-yard line, drop your pants, and take a giant shit in it. Instead of doing what you were supposed to do, playing football, winning, playing good, whatever the case. Something like that. What else do we have today? What other segments do I need to add to this Your Season is Over video? Let me know in the comments. We usually add segments sort of as we go throughout the season. Do I have copious notes? You asked? Of course I do. I got a whole page of notes here. I've got a whole page of notes here. I've got a whole page of notes here. In other words, I got 3 pages of copious notes. Let's start with the year season. Actually, no, we're going to start with 2 teams that lost yesterday because this will be real quick. We're going to start with 2 teams that lost yesterday, and I decided not to move their helmets to the list. Up first, I hate doing this. Army. Man, Army had a good year last year. Came close to potentially making the college football playoff. They had that bad loss to Notre Dame, but, they were ranked pretty high at one point. Looked like maybe if they won their conference, they would end up the highest ranked conference champion. That, of course, ended up not happening, but they still had a really good year. That might not be the case this year. They lost yesterday to something called Tarleton State. I don't know what that is. I don't know where it is. Their mascot has to be the Turtles, though, just because that would set, the Tarleton Turtles. It just rolls off your tongue. But they lost to Tarleton State 30-27. I don't think I'm ever going to take a Service Academy helmet off the wall for the point and laugh deal, unless one of them were to make it to the playoffs. And then, of course, they would be fair game at that point. I just don't feel right laughing at the Service Academies. But losing to Tarleton State is pretty bad. The United States Army is on quite a losing streak. I don't like to get into that because it makes people mad, but we haven't won a war since World War II. And now we can't even defeat Tarleton State. The other one I decided, I'm going to move on. The other one I decided not to take down, this can of corn right here, Northwestern. They lost to Tulane 23-3. That's bad. I mean, Tulane's a group of 5 team. They're a decent group of 5 team, usually. But there aren't any Northwestern fans. Who's going to watch this video and then get mad or get their feelings hurt if I make fun of Northwestern? Nobody. There are no Northwestern fans. Are there any Ding-a-ling Car Wash fans? I don't know. Maybe. But Northwestern lost to Tulane. But I decided not to take those helmets down. Okay, enough of that crap. Let's get to the ones we did take their helmet down. I mentioned at the beginning there were some... Heading into any week of college football, you go, okay, this is how I look at it anyway. In relation to the Your Season Is Over video, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going to get some good material here because we've got 2 good teams playing. Like, for example, and we'll get to this in a second, but like Texas and Ohio State, Alabama and Florida State, Clemson and LSU, games like that involving teams that have big fan bases, big name programs. Whoever loses those games is great for the Your Season Is Over video, right? Because you're going to get you're obviously pulling the helmet down on if any of those teams lose. And so when 2 of those big name teams are playing each other, it's a no-brainer. Okay, I'm going to have that for sure. But then sometimes some losses end up happening that you didn't see coming. You have no idea. You're like, whoa, okay. Such was the case with Boise State. And I know the helmet is turned I love this helmet. It's a good-looking helmet, but the way they go on the wall, the numbers are on the other side. So anyway, neither here nor there. I don't even know if you cared about that. I, of course, care a lot about the entire helmet situation, so I figured I'd point that out. I didn't see this coming. South Florida was a popular underdog pick this week with the points. Like people, they're going to keep it close. I don't know if anybody saw this coming, though. 34-7? I know they lost that. What were we calling them last year? Ashtonian, Worthington, Smithton, or whatever. I know they lost that running back, and he was a huge part of what they did last year, obviously. He was one of the best running backs in all of college football. A lot of people think he should have won the Heisman. That, of course, went to Travis Hunter. But so, yeah, they lost him, yes. But Boise State was good before they had Alberti and Worthington, Smithton, Ashton Genty. They were good before they had him. And even though they lost him, they brought back the majority of their team, including their quarterback, Madsen, who had a really good year last year. And you say, well, they got to go on the road. They got to play South Florida. Maybe the heat gets to it. So there was all these things ahead of the game that sort of maybe you want to lean towards taking South Florida and the points. I don't think anybody saw this coming, though, 34-7. And actually, a lot of y'all I know watched this game, so you probably already know this, but Boise State lost 3 fumbles. Not just fumbled 3 times, they lost 3 fumbles in this game. And that played a big part in what happened. In other words, the score is more lopsided, really, than the game actually was. You turn the ball over 3 times, you lose 3 fumbles and don't force any. That's a problem. You're giving another team 3 extra possessions, and you're giving yourself 3 less. That's basically a 6-possession differential there. And they lost 34-7. But when you look at the total yards here, Boise State outgained South Florida. So what does this mean now coming out of this game for both teams? And this is going to be a theme of this video. What does this mean for these teams, the ones that lost and the ones that won? Talked about this in week 0. You have to be careful drawing any concrete conclusions from things you see in week 1, because what ends up happening is a lot of our preconceived notions about teams end up being wrong. And the best example I can think of recent to give you of this is last year, week 0. Florida State was ranked in the top 10 in the preseason. Georgia Tech was unranked. Georgia Tech and Florida State go over to Ireland. Georgia Tech beats them. Now, it was funny. We made fun of Florida State. Everybody wanted Florida State to lose because of the way they had acted during the offseason the year before. But when they lost that game, try to think back to your mindset immediately after that game. What did you think about Georgia Tech? And what did you think about Florida State the minute that game ended? Did you think, wow, Georgia Tech must be really good? They beat top 10 Florida State. Or did you think, wow, Florida State must be terrible? They lost to a dog shit Georgia Tech team. You didn't really know which one of those things were going to end up being true. Now, what ended up being true in that case last year was that Georgia Tech was probably a little bit better than people thought they were, but not a whole lot. They ended the season 7-6. And Florida State ended up being way worse. Way worse than anybody thought they would be. But Georgia Tech didn't end up being some kind of great team because they won the game. Florida State did end up being terrible. But did you really know that at the time that game ended? I don't think you did, because you're going, well, maybe Georgia Tech's really good. And Florida State maybe shouldn't be a top 10 team, but maybe they're top 15-ish or top 20-ish. Well, Florida State ended up going 2-10. So is Boise State terrible? They lost 34-7 to South Florida. Well, I just told you they outgained South Florida. If you watch the game, it was the 3 turnovers. Now, if South Florida turns the ball over 3 times every game and has a -3 turnover differential in every game, yeah, they're going to lose a lot more games. But if you look at Boise State's schedule, and the Mountain West is not very good this year at all, outside of Lou and LV, Boise State is probably going to win a lot of games this year, would be my guess. They're very well coached. Again, they returned a ton from last year's team, and it did not go well in week 0. I'm not sugarcoating it. That's an embarrassing loss to South Florida. And you got blown out 34-7. So I can come on here and say, oh, yeah, you outgained South Florida, and you turned the ball over 3 times. That's why you lost. Bottom line is you fucking lost, dummy. And that's all that matters for the purposes of this video. I'm just using this game as an example, and it's going to be an example in a lot of these other games we talk about today. It's so easy to overreact in week 1, and I saw it all day yesterday in my comment section. And again, that's going to be a theme of this video. Overreacting to what you see in week 1 in a team's first game or second game or whatever it is. Whether or not what you think you know after week 1 is actually true or not true. So I'll ask you this. What do you think about Boise State? And what do you think about South Florida coming out of week 1? Is Boise State going 6-6 because they lost to South Florida and because South Florida's terrible? Or is Boise State pretty good and South Florida's just a lot better than we thought they were? We'll find out in the next couple of weeks. But Boise State, your season is over. I seriously doubt Boise State's making the college football playoff this year. I will say that. Now, they weren't my pick out of the group of 5 to make it anyway, but they were a lot of people's pick. Josh Pate. Josh Pate had a bad day yesterday. Josh Pate's had a bad few days. He picked Nebraska to make, well, we'll get to that when we do the Josh Pate special. Anyway, Boise State, your season is over. I don't think they're going to make playoffs. 34-7. Well, okay. Boise State, 122 yards rushing. South Florida only had 117 yards rushing. South Florida had 255 yards passing. Boise State had 256 yards passing. So, like I said, Boise State outgained them, but doesn't matter. They lost the game. All right, let's get to one of the good ones. The Shorthorns. Holy shit, am I mad at the Shorthorns? Well, I don't even know if mad's the right word. I'm suffering from secondhand embarrassment. It's very well documented, especially on this channel. The struggles that Ohio State has had with the SEC, not just under Ryan Day, not just in the last 10 years, for the entirety of their history. If you look at Ohio State's overall win-loss record against the SEC for the history of football, it's abysmal. It's absolutely terrible. I'm talking about their record against teams that were in the SEC when they played them. So I'm not talking about, Ohio State beating Oklahoma before Oklahoma was in the SEC or whatever, anything like that. I'm talking their record against the SEC was abysmal. Now, they won a couple of games against the SEC last year, but that's kind of the point I'm coming to here. Ohio State has, what do they have, 8 wins all time in their 100-plus year history against the SEC? All time? The postseason record's even worse, but I'm talking about all time, regular season and postseason. They're, what are they? Something like 8-15 or 8-14, something like that against the SEC. They got about 8 wins. 2 of those 8 wins are against Texas in the last 8 months. 25% of Ohio State's wins against the SEC all time are against Ohio State. And Ohio State has only been in the SEC for a little bit over a year. They've been in the SEC for 13 months. Texas has. They joined the SEC officially last July. It is absolutely embarrassing and unacceptable for you, Texas man, to, first of all, to just embarrass yourself. But when you lose to Ohio State with an SEC patch on your jersey, that's a problem. And you've done it twice in 8 months. And I'm a little tired at this point of the attitude and the sort of arrogance of the Texas fan. They're a lot like Ohio State fans in that way, sort of the attitude that they carry about themselves. Now, the difference is Ohio State finally proved something last year and actually won a national title. They ran through a gauntlet in the playoffs, destroying almost every team they played, including you, and won a national title. So as much as I hate it, Ohio State fans at least have a right and deserve right now to walk around with their chest poked out. They won something. They won a national title. You haven't done shit in 20 years. Nothing. Winning the Big 12 means absolutely nothing to me. The Big 12 is a garbage can. Now, you used to be a giant pile of trash that sat on top of that garbage can, no doubt. When you weren't busy getting your ass beat by Oklahoma basically the last 10 years that y'all were in the Big 12. But you won a lot of Big 12 titles. You won a natty in 2005. There ain't a player on your team that was alive when that happened. I mean, Vince Young's a long time ago. And plus, he can't put a sentence together, Vince Young. Doesn't he have the lowest Wonderlic score of all time? Anyway, that doesn't matter. There's no sense in shitting on Texas from 2005 when we can shit on them now. You go out and you lose to Ohio State again. Twice in a row, you've lost to Ohio State. You have a 2-game losing streak to Ohio State, and it's in your 2 last games. Like, how do you lose to Ohio State once, twice in a row with an SEC patch on your jersey? I've got half a mind to drive my ass to Austin and start ripping the patches off of these deadbeats' jerseys because they don't deserve it. It's like a motorcycle gang, and when you fuck up, they rip your patch off or burn your fucking ink off your arm or your back. That's what needs to happen to these Texas fans and the Texas team. Y'all walk around like everybody owes you something. Nobody owes you a goddamn thing. You owe me something. You owe me an explanation about why it is you can't win a fucking game. I haven't even mentioned the fact that you got ran out by Georgia twice last year. You got reamed and bottomed out. The entire Texas team and fan base has to wear a diaper because their asshole got exploded twice last year by Georgia. And then Ohio State came in and came in it and finished it off. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. The Texas fan asshole looks like the inside of a tomato paste can. And then you go out yesterday and you lose. And I mean, where was the offense? I don't know if defending Arch Manning is the right word because the guy hasn't really played that much, but Arch Manning has caught a lot of shit over the last couple of years. And to be fair to Arch Manning, it's not really any fault of his own. Arch Manning isn't out there telling everybody how great he is all the time. It's some of these media types that have been hyping this guy up nonstop, making him the favorite for the Heisman, which was ridiculous. I didn't even have him in my Heisman finalist list for this year. But he played absolutely terrible yesterday. And I know, it wasn't his first start. It's his first year as a starter, but this wasn't his first start. And I know Ohio State's got a good defense. And I still think Arch Manning may end up having a pretty good year. But this was absolutely embarrassing yesterday, offensively. This set football back 25 years. And before the Ohio State man starts to say anything, y'all weren't any better. In fact, you might have been worse. You were worse. Texas loses to Ohio State 14-7, an absolute barn burner. Hey, Texas, I bet you missed the Big 12, not just because you lost, but damn, Big 12, remember in the late 2010s, every Big 12 game was 55-50. Holy shit, y'all might not score 55 points all year with what I saw yesterday. But anyway, you lost to Ohio State 14-7. Now, Manning was 17 of 30 for 170 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Now, that's not abysmal stat line against a good defense. It's not horrible. But again, it's not even really about the stat line. When you watch the game, he never looked comfortable. He looked like he was unsure of himself, didn't really know where to go with the ball. Some of this, I'm sure, was by design. Some of it was because of the defense Ohio State was playing. But everything was underneath, at or behind the line of scrimmage, 3 or 4 yard hook routes downfield, short out routes. A lot of that had to do with the sort of the shell defense that Ohio State was playing. And to be fair, Texas played the same thing, and it was successful as well against the Ohio State offense. Ohio State didn't hit any big plays either where they hit the one. But so there was just nothing there. The expression like there's no there, all hat, no cattle. Is that familiar phrase to you? Is that something you can understand? Yeah, that's part of the problem. Y'all are a bunch. You know what it is? Texas fans are a bunch of fucking shit kickers that live in Austin. There's nothing country about Austin, okay? It's a liberal safe haven, all right? So, and I don't even necessarily have an issue with that. Most college towns are liberal. But what the fuck are y'all doing running around with these giant fucking hats on? Not a single one of y'all is a fucking rancher or a cowboy. Why are you pretending to be? Y'all like to make fun of Texas A&M because they dress up like soldiers. You act like a 6-year-old dressed up like a cowboy. You're not a fucking cowboy. You sell car insurance for Geico. Take the fucking cowboy hat off. God damn, man. You haven't won anything in forever. You can't win the SEC. You can't beat Ohio State. You haven't won a national title in 20 years. All you have is a giant fucking hat that's too big for your head, which is amazing because your head is so goddamn big, you look like a Minecraft character. Texas fans look like they were built out of Lincoln logs and somebody plucked a hat on there that was way too fucking big. Take the hat off. You're not a cowboy. You're not a rancher. There's some fucking 8-year-old running around playing Cowboys and Indians. Well, I guess Ohio State was the Indians, and yesterday the Indians won 14-7. Julian Sand wasn't much better. In fact, he was worse. 13 of 20 for 126 yards. So Texas played good defense, but had no offense. Now you can say the same thing for Ohio State or Texas, I guess. They played good defense too. Texas had 166 rushing yards. Ohio State, 89 rushing yards. All right, now we've shit on Texas. Let's move on to Ohio State. Ohio State, are y'all bragging today? Well, first of all, you deserve to be bragging because you won. You did win the game. You're 1-0. You beat Texas. Whoopity fucking do. Where's your offense? You don't have one. The only reason Texas lost this game, besides having no offense, let's not forget, Texas got down inside the 10-yard line twice in the second half yesterday, and both times they came away with 0 fucking points. You can't win a big game that way. You can't. So Texas deserved to lose. You can talk about, well, they had more rushing yards, they had more passing yards, they outplayed them here, they did this, they did that. They held Jeremiah Smith to 5 catches for 40 yards or whatever it was. Yeah, that's great. You lost the fucking game because you got down inside the 10-yard line not once but twice and came away with 0 fucking point. You had the ball on the 6-inch line and couldn't fucking score. You didn't deserve to win that game. You didn't deserve to win that game. And now it's time to recalculate some things in the SEC for a lot of y'all. Not for me, because I didn't pick Texas to win the SEC. I didn't even pick Texas to make the SEC championship game. And from what I saw yesterday, that's a pretty accurate prediction by your boy Uncle Lou. Y'all look bad on offense. Really bad. I know Ohio State has a good defense. They're probably going to have a top 5 or a top 10 defense, but holy shit, y'all better get something figured out. And Arch Manning better get it together because that was bad yesterday. From a guy that's been in, look, we can talk about how he's a first-year starter, but this guy's got multiple starts under his belt, and he's been on campus for 3 fucking years. 3 years. Let me give you an example that's kind of similar to what happened yesterday with Arch Manning. Last year, when Carson Beck got hurt at Georgia, Gunnar Stockton had to start in a playoff game against Notre Dame, a team that had a top 5 defense in the country last year. Now, Georgia lost that game, but Gunnar Stockton completed 60% of his passes for 250 yards and no interceptions. He wasn't the reason they lost. There's a long list, a mile long, of other reasons Georgia lost, mainly the offensive line and special teams. We don't need to rehash that game. But anyway, the idea that because he's a first-year starter is an excuse for this abysmal, piss-poor fucking performance yesterday, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. He's got to get a lot better, or else the haters were right. And that's going to make them no longer haters. It's going to make them ball knowers. Can you imagine if the haters ever became ball knowers? All these people that have been running around for years saying Arch Manning is hot fucking doo-doo, they're on cloud 9 today because it looks like they're right. Now, I'm not throwing Arch Manning away. I still think he's talented, and Sarkisian is pretty good with QBs and pretty good with offense, so we'll see. If he can sort of crank it up as the season goes along. But boy, yesterday was bad. Yesterday was really bad. And if Ohio State didn't win this game, I'd be saying these exact same things about Julian, saying the Ohio State offense was bad too. Again, mentioned a minute ago, theme today, overreacting to week 1. What does a win mean? What does a loss mean? I did a poll yesterday after this game, after the Texas-Ohio State game. Do you think Texas is still making the playoffs? 80%, 85% said yes. I still think Texas can be a good team. So even though I'm here to talk shit on them today, because that's the point of the video, I still think Texas can be a good team and have a good season and potentially make the playoffs as an at-large, just like they did last year, by the way. They're not winning the SEC with what I saw yesterday, and Ohio State can clearly still make the playoffs, but both of these teams have got to get better offensively. Now, they can. A lot of times, defenses are ahead of offenses early in the season. And this wasn't the only game yesterday involving high-level teams that struggled to move the ball offensively. We'll talk more about that when we get to LSU Clemson. But Texas, for now anyway, your season is over. And I'm going to need the Texas fans to pull up to to sit in the fucking high chair, strap yourself in, have your mama push you up to the table, and eat a giant plate of shut the fuck up for a while. Okay? You lost to Georgia twice last year, including in the SEC championship game. You then went out and lost to Ohio State in the playoffs, and now you've started the season with a loss to Ohio State again. We don't want to hear a fucking word from you about how great you are, or about how you're a blue blood, or about how many recruits you're buying for the 2027 class. I don't want to hear a fucking word out of you, except for what the plan is for Arch Manning to get better and how you plan on winning games this year with no fucking offense. Other than that, sit down and shut the fuck up and quit running around telling people how good you used to be. Nobody gives a fuck, because today you ain't no good at all and your season is over, shorthorn man. Now fuck you and fuck off. All right, who wants to be next now that I'm gonna got myself all riled up? Let's start over with the fucking taters. How about these deadbeated motherfuckers here? I thought Cade Klubnik was going to be great. Hell, he was great last year. The Ohio State-Texas game went about the way I thought it would go, to be honest. Low-scoring, defensive struggle. I didn't think the quarterbacks would be that bad, but anyway, enough about that. I didn't think that would be the case for Clemson and LSU. I thought because we had 2 experienced quarterbacks in that one, as opposed to Texas-Ohio State, 2 pretty new quarterbacks, I thought the offenses would be okay in that game. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. Cade Klubnik has regressed to a point where he's unrecognizable. Now, if I'm being completely fair to Cade Klubnik, Clemson's offensive line is horrendous, and they've got no run game. And every off season, when you're going into a season and you're talking about teams, high level teams that could potentially win conferences or make playoffs or whatever, you start to look for not necessarily known weaknesses, but question marks or concerns, things that maybe you don't know for sure about a team. And sometimes when the season starts and those teams play, those questions get answered in the affirmative. You go, oh, okay, I kind of had a question about this particular player or this particular position group, but after watching them play, they're going to be just fine. And sometimes those questions get answered in the negative, and that's what happened with Clemson. My two questions about Clemson heading into this year were the running game and the offensive line. And it turns out that neither one of those things fucking exist at all. The running game doesn't exist, and the offensive line doesn't exist. So to the Clemson fans, told me I was an idiot. We got this running back and that running back. I said, if you got all these great running backs, then why the fuck did you move a wide receiver from wide receiver to running back, Adam Randall? Oh, well, it's just for depth. It's just for this. We got this freshman and this second-year guy. Adam Randall, a wide receiver, was your leading fucking rusher yesterday. Cade Klubnik was running for his life the entire game. The offensive line was pitiful in run blocking and pass blocking. Again, with Cade Klubnik, just like with Arch Manning, I'm not going to throw him away right now and say, oh, well, he's fucking terrible. He had a great year last year. He was terrible 2 years ago. Really bad 2 years ago, his first year as a starter. Turned it around last year, was one of the best quarterbacks in football. What do you have? 40 touchdowns and 6 interceptions last year? Had a really good year. Yesterday was absolute dog shit from Cade Klubnik. Some of it's his fault. You got to be better. You got to get rid of the ball quicker. You got to fucking know the rush is coming from which direction and slide one way or the other. I mean, so a lot of it's on Cade. He's been at Clemson forever. This is his third year as a starter. A lot of it falls on Cade. But a lot of it falls on that garbage fucking offensive line that they couldn't block me yesterday, the Clemson offensive line. You combine that with bad running backs, a converted wide receiver becomes your leading rusher and number one running back, and a terrible offensive line. And what do you end up getting? You end up getting a loss to the Corn Dogs, 17-10. The Taters are down bad. 3 straight losses for the Taters to the SEC. No, 4 now. Holy shit, 4. Clemson lost to Georgia to start the year last year. The next SEC team they played was South Carolina in rivalry weekend. They lost that. They then made the playoffs by some miracle because they beat the worst conference on the planet, or they won the worst conference on the planet, the ACC, made the playoffs and earned the privilege to go lose to another SEC team, Texas. So they lost 3 straight SEC games last year. Every SEC team they played. Then they open up the season this year with a loss to another SEC team, LSU. So not only do you have a 4-game losing streak to the SEC, it's 3 different teams. So you lost to the best team in the SEC last year, Georgia. You lost to a middle-of-the-road SEC team last year, South Carolina. You lost to the second best team in the SEC last year, Texas. And then you turn around and start this season by losing to probably a top 3 or 4 team in the SEC this year, LSU. You've got an SEC problem. You've got an SEC problem. You can't beat them for whatever reason. And guess what? You got to play South Carolina again at the end of this year. You get to watch them win today against the ACC. They're going to beat the life out of Virginia Tech. You can't beat an SEC team if your life depends on it. 17-10, you lose to the Corn Dogs. Listen to this stat line from Cade Klubnik. 19 of 38. So even when he was able to get the ball off, which was 38 times, he only completed 50% of his passes. As much as I like Cade Klubnik last year, this guy should not be throwing the ball 40 times a game. So, I get it. You have no choice because like I tried to tell you, your running game is dog shit. It doesn't exist. Dabo knew that. So you end up throwing the ball 40 times, 50% completion percentage, 230 yards, which is decent. No touchdowns and an interception. LSU, on the other hand, Nussmeier, 28 of 38, so completed a much higher percentage of his passes. He also had 230 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interception. So the difference in the game is that Cade Klubnik Nussmeier outplayed Cade Klubnik, period. And then you've got the rushing. Clemson yesterday. Then there's no way. I wrote this down wrong. 32 yards rushing. Just cancel your whole fucking program. A top 5 team in the country. Hey, I guess those 4 players you got out of the portal, Dabo, to shut people up, wasn't quite enough, bud. Hey, was there any offensive linemen in the portal? Were there any running backs in the portal? Of course there were. But you don't need any. You'll just move a wide receiver, Adam Randall, over to running back so he can shit on himself. I thought maybe I was wrong about Dabo. You know, for the last 3 years, I've been clowning Dabo. I was like, it's over. The football has passed him by. He doesn't like NIL. He doesn't like players getting paid. He even said he would quit if it ever got to the point where the university was paying the players. Well, guess what? The university is paying the players. And it kind of looks like Dabo has quit, doesn't it? Refuses to use the portal outside of, I mean, he brought in 3 or 4 guys just to quiet down the crowd, but, you know, they're not doing anything. You could have used a running back and some offensive linemen yesterday when you were busy rushing for 32 yards. That's fucking pitiful, piss poor, pathetic, and sad. I'm off the Clemson train. They may still make the playoffs. Look, we have to be realistic here. Just because they lost to LSU doesn't mean they're no longer in the ACC. Clemson is still in the ACC. Who else is winning it? Florida State. We'll talk about them in a minute. Clemson still has a chance to make the playoffs if they win the ACC, but what do you think's going to happen if they get in there? The same thing that happens to whatever group of 5 team gets in. They're going to get their fucking ass beat because they're not very good. They're not elite. They're not top 10. They're not a top 10 team. I'm moving them out of my top 10. I know they lost to LSU's a good team. You got to leave them in the top 10. No, I don't. Because if Clemson played any other top 10 team, they'd lose. Tell me who on this shelf Clemson's beating. Penn State? No. Ohio State? Notre Dame? Oregon? Georgia? Maybe Miami, but that's only because Miami's in the ACC. LSU, we already know they're not beating them. Kansas State? Okay, you might could beat Kansas State. Kansas State's dog shit, man. They're lucky they're not down here again. We're going to talk about them in a minute when we get to the teams that won that look bad, but I wouldn't pick Clemson against Arizona State. I wouldn't pick Clemson against Michigan. Illinois blew somebody out. UNLV? Please. Dan Mullen will beat the life out of Dabo Swinney and piss on his grave. Look, Clemson, your season is over. I don't know at what point that will actually be true, but it's going to be at some point before the national title game. Scratch Clemson off your list of potential teams that can win the national title. By the way, I'm not willing to say that about Texas, by the way. I wouldn't pick Texas to win the Natty right now, but I don't think they should be scratched off your list. Clemson, just get rid of them altogether. Quit. You don't even have to think about Clemson the rest of the year, honestly. You really don't. They're that bad. Speaking of being that bad, what in the absolute blue fucking hell is going on with Alabama? I honestly don't know. I would love to come on here and say, well, this problem and that problem and this and that. There's so many problems. I could do an hour-long video just on that. The defensive coordinator's in over his head. Now, I said that when he was hired 2 years ago. They found him in South Alabama or whatever the fuck low dump school he was in. It was a bad hire. He's still there. The defense was horrible. Ty Simpson, holy shit, what are you doing? What are you doing? They can't run the ball. They can't tackle. It looked like a Lincoln Riley defense. Like Florida State players, mainly Tommy Castellanos, we're going to talk about him in a second too, running through arm tackles. There's videos on Twitter of Florida State offensive linemen pulling, like to block an Alabama defensive end or outside linebacker, and just leveling them. Pancake. I mean, just shooing them away like a fucking fly. I can't. I love talking shit, and there's no better team to talk shit about when they lose in Alabama because it's funny. Their fans get so mad because all they have is football. Alabama fans, they literally don't have anything else. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I honestly believe this. Alabama has become soft. And I'm not trolling. I'm not even trash talking when I say that. That is my honest take on what I saw yesterday from Alabama. They are fucking soft. I don't know if it's Kalen DeBoer's West Coast mentality has trickled down because they've got talented players. On paper, they should have the best defense in the SEC. They are soft. I've not seen an Alabama team get manhandled like that. I've seen them lose games. Saw them lose games last year where their offense struggled. Vandy in Oklahoma and Mildew didn't know what he was doing, but all that kind of thing. I mean, you got to go back pre-Saban, the mid-2000s, over 20 years ago, to see an Alabama team just get put on roller skates and pushed around and manhandled and honestly bitch slapped by Tommy Castellanos. Wow. Castellanos is not a good quarterback. Okay? Again, to get back to the theme of week 1 here, what conclusions can you really draw after just one game? You can draw the conclusion that Alabama is soft. I ain't drawing the conclusion that Florida State's some kind of top 5 team. No. Top 25? Could be. I had Florida State, I think, at 8-4 this year. They might get to 9 wins. They might challenge Clemson if Clemson gets a little worse. But Castellanos is not some type of high-level fucking quarterback, dude. And he ran through that defense like it wasn't there. I almost, instead of like just laughing and shit-talking, I almost just want to like shake my head and be like, I just can't believe it. You lost 31-17. This game was never close. Florida State was the better team from the time the whistle blew until the time you slithered off the fucking field with your tiny little dick between your legs. They just whooped you on both sides of the ball, 31-17. Ty Simpson, 23 of 43. Not a bad stat line, 23 of 43, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. Bama ran the ball for 87 fucking yards. 87 yards. Now, this is a Bama team that spent all offseason re-emphasizing the run game. After last year, Kalen DeBoer's first year in Alabama was Alabama's worst rushing season in 20 years. Number-wise. Yards per game, total yards, yards per attempt, yards per carry, all that kind of stuff. It was their worst rushing year in 20 years. They re-emphasized it. They focused on it. It was a major sort of flashpoint for Alabama this offseason was to correct, fix, and emphasize the running game for this year. And then they come out in week 1 against a 2-win Florida State team from last year and rush for 87 yards. Florida State, meanwhile, 236 yards rushing. Unbelievable. Castellanos, 9 of 14 for 152 yards. He's Riley Leonard. He's Haynes King. He's whatever. He's one of these, okay? He can't throw the ball. He can run around some. Not, and when I say some, when he plays Alabama, he can run around a lot. He had 78 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. But the thing is, because you say, well, 78 yards, it was how he did it and when he did it. Every single time it looked like Alabama may be able to come up with a stop defensively, whatever the down and distance was, Castellanos got more yards than that. Just like Haynes King and Riley Leonard do to people sometimes, right? They're not great throwers either one of those two, and neither is Castellanos. And it's why Georgia Tech in particular with Haynes King loses to high-level teams because they're too one-dimensional. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. There is no way to spin this or sugarcoat it or even have any type of positivity coming out of this game and say, well, if we just clean up this or clean up that, you'd have to clean up everything. The offensive line was bad, got dominated by FSU's front. The defensive front was bad, got dominated by FSU's O-line. The secondary, there's not a single player in Alabama's secondary who can tackle somebody. And that's sad that you had to find that out against Florida State. And the reason that is because all of Florida State's players were busy running around in your secondary because your front seven wasn't tackling them either. Ty Simpson, even though his stat line was okay, he's nothing exciting or electric, or he's not somebody that's going to put the team on his shoulders and carry them to a win. He's J.J. McCarthy. He's Will Howard from last year. Yet if Alabama is amazing around Ty Simpson probably won't lose you any games. He's not Cam Newton. He's not Shedeur Sanders or even Cam Ward from last year at Miami, who can sort of put a team on his shoulders and carry him across the finish line if the defense gives up 50 points or something, like how Cam Ward had to do a lot of times. He's not that. And you don't have that around. You don't have the elite stuff around him. Where is it? Where is it? Ryan Williams, look, painting your fingernails is fucking weird, okay? I'm not drawing any conclusions from that other than that about Ryan Williams, okay? Like some people do. Like, I don't think that because he paints his fingernails necessarily, that means that he only likes bananas because of the way they're shaped. I'm not saying that. But I am saying it's fucking weird. It seems like more of the sort of West Coast, left coast kind of just, it's not tough. And I know that you're not supposed to say certain things these days anymore, and you have to be open to this and open to that. And I am. I like, if he wants to paint his fingernails, he can. But like, football is like the last thing where you're like, look, you gotta be tough. There's nothing tough about painting your fingernails. He didn't have a great game. Jeremy Bernard's your best wide receiver, not Ryan Williams. And is it because he paints his fingernails? I don't know. But that's just fucking weird. And again, I'm not even connecting the dots for me to be like, oh, because you know what I'm talking about without me saying it, right? Or do I have to say it? I'm not saying he's gay. And if he was gay, I wouldn't even care. To be honest with you, I am one of those liberal tree-hugging, like, don't care who you have sex with as long as it's two consenting adults type. I don't give a shit about that. I really don't. So I'm not saying like, oh, he paints his fingernail, that means he only likes bananas because of the way they're shaped. That's not what I'm saying. But the whole team, it looks like Lincoln Riley's team. Like, where's the toughness? Where's somebody on that team that's going to stand up at halftime in the locker room and go, what the fuck are we doing? We're getting pushed around. Well, where is that just overall, mentality? Bama's supposed to be the bully on the block. In a matter of 13 months, Kalen DeBoer has turned them from the bully into the snot-nosed dweeb that's getting bullied. Y'all are bad. And you want to hear some bad news? And this is another thing where I'm not trolling. I'm being serious. Alabama might struggle to make a bowl game this year. Look at their schedule. Let me just run through a list of teams they play. And I want you tell me, of these teams that I named, which ones are you over 50% confident right now that they'll win that game? They'll win that game. At Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, Auburn, at South Carolina, Oklahoma, Vandy. That's their SEC schedule. They got Wisconsin coming up. I think they'll still beat Wisconsin. Maybe. I think Texas has a shot to make the playoffs. They lost to Ohio State 14-7. Ohio State's a top 5 team. Alabama's not making the playoffs again for the second year in a row. And while that's hilarious, I'm actually a little mad because I'm not mad they're not making the playoffs. I'm mad that we have found out now that they're not making the playoffs, because we are going to have to put up with the next 4 months of the college football season, plus the 8 months of the off season, where the Alabama fans run around the internet and yell at us that they could have won any hypothetical game they didn't play against teams that are in the playoffs. Meanwhile, in reality, they got big boyed by Florida State. They're yelling to fire that defensive coordinator, Cade Womack. I get it. Somebody's got to pay for these crimes. Kalen DeBoer is the problem, and you can't fire him. I don't think they can afford to fire him. The buyout would be astronomical. I don't think they can afford it. So I don't think he's going anywhere. He's recruiting good. What does Kalen, let me ask you a question. What good is it going to do that Kalen DeBoer is recruiting good? He's got the best roster in college football right now. Recruiting wise, on paper, talent wise, top to bottom. But so what if he keeps recruiting in the top 5? He ain't SEC material. He's Pac-12 Brian Harsin, which some people told you. But he's in over his head. It's Kalen DeBoer. Bama, your season's over. For real. Seriously, I'm not even trolling. Let's talk about this game. Colorado and Georgia Tech. Colorado's season was over the minute Shador and Travis Hunter declared for the draft last year. Yeah, it was. This was a weird game. I don't know what the numbers or the stats are on this. The road team, you go on the road and you turn the ball over on your own side of the field 3 straight times in the first quarter. What percentage of the time does a team do that and win the game? It's got to be less than 5%. And instead of that proving like how bad Georgia Tech is because they turned the ball over on their first 3 possessions of the game, which they did, that they had 3 turnovers with 7.5 minutes to go in the first quarter. They turned the ball over 3 straight times. And the score after all of that was only 7-0 Colorado. So as bad as it is that Georgia Tech did that, it's worse for Colorado that it was only 7-0 after those 3 turnovers. And the only reason it was 7-0 and not 0-0 is because one of the turnovers Georgia Tech committed inside their own 15-yard line. So Colorado gets the ball basically on the 15-yard line. They don't gain a single yard, 3 and out, but they were already in. That was the next time they scored. It was like a 15-yard touchdown drive. That's it. The other 2 turnovers that Georgia Tech had were outside of field goal range. Colorado couldn't get a first down, punted it away. That's pitiful for Colorado. And you can go through the stats, and if you watch the game like I did, you can say, well, maybe, if Colorado would have done this, would have done that, or maybe they should have run it more, passed it more, or played this defense or that deal. The bottom line is, if you just score off of those turnovers, which is what you're supposed to do, Georgia Tech gave Colorado 3 extra possessions in the first quarter. You usually don't even get the ball 3 times in the first quarter. Colorado got the ball 6 times in the first quarter, had 7 points. That is pitiful. That is pitiful. Georgia Tech goes on to win the game by some miracle, 27-20. Ended up being a great game at the end, but Georgia Tech gets the win on the road despite turning the ball over on their first 3 possessions, 27-20. Haynes King, 13 of 20 for 143 yards. Welcome to your future, Alabama. That's Ty Simpson. That's Ty Simpson right there. That's a Ty Simpson stat line all year long. 13 of 20, 143 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Georgia Tech ran the ball 320 yards. In that respect, the game went about like I thought it would go. I said, leading up to the game, I said, I think Georgia Tech's going to try to run the ball, keep the Colorado offense off the field, slow the game up, and try to get out of there. That changed a little bit in the first quarter because of the 3 turnovers and being down 7-0. They had to throw it a little bit more than they wanted to, probably in the first half to try to overcome those 3 turnovers. But once they did that and got the lead, they ran, 320 rushing yards. I do want to give some credit to Colorado in this game for one point here. The first 2 years that Deion's been the pretend head coach at Colorado, and of course the reason I say pretend head coach because Deion's not a coach. The coordinators, the assistants, and the position coaches are coaching that team. Deion is not a coach at all. He's a team mom with a gold whistle. He's a hype man. He is to Colorado what Flava Flav was to Public Enemy. He's not the talent. He's the hype man. But anyway, I do want to give Colorado some credit. The first 2 years that Deion was fake in charge at Colorado, They had the worst running game in all of FBS. 140 teams we're up to now. They had the least amount of yards per game, the least number of attempts, the least in yards per carry, the least yards rushing for the season. Over that cumulative 2-year period, they were the worst running team on the planet, and they ran the ball the least of any team on the planet. They are clearly trying to correct that. They had 146 yards rushing. And while that's not going to set the world on fire against a Georgia Tech defense or whatever, if you watch the game, it was clear that they have made a decision. Somebody there, not Dion, he doesn't make decisions, but somebody there has made the decision, we have to run the ball more. So I will give them some credit for that. Now, we all know, I think, why Colorado didn't run the ball the first 2 years, don't we? We all know it gets back to what I told you Dion is and what he isn't. He's not a coach. He's a team mom with a gold whistle. His son was the quarterback. How do quarterbacks get into the NFL? Not by quarterbacking teams with great running games. They get into the NFL by numbers, stats, and throwing the ball around. And so that was Dion's only goal the last 2 years, was to get Shedeur into the NFL. He succeeded in that he is in the NFL. Turns out he's not any good, like 8th string quarterback at Cleveland or whatever. But now that his son is gone, he's like, okay, we can run the ball now. It's so predictable. So predictable. 146 yards rushing. Caden Salter, who took over for Shedeur Sanders. Now, they also have Juju Lewis, 5-star freshman. He didn't play in this one. I do expect to see some Juju Lewis at quarterback this year for Colorado, maybe sooner rather than later if they keep losing games. But Caden Salter, 17 of 28 for 159 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. So here's another game with no offense. So no offense in that game, no offense in the Clemson LSU game, no offense in the Texas Ohio State game. A lot of games this weekend were not a whole lot of offense. Some of it you can attribute to really good defenses, particularly, I think, the Texas-Ohio State game. Look, and I'm being serious. Does anybody really think that Texas or Ohio State, either one, isn't going to have a top 15 offense in the country? Of course they are. Of course they are. Yes, the Texas, we can take all 4 of these games, or 4 of these teams in particular. Texas versus Ohio State, LSU versus Clemson. Let's just talk about the defenses. 11 starters. I know you rotate players, so let's say 15. The 15 players that played the most on each of those 4 defenses. That's 60. That would be 60 players. Take Clemson's top 15 defensive players, LSU's top 15, Texas's top 15, and Ohio State's top 15 defensive players from this weekend. That's 60 players. How many of those 60 do you think are going to end up getting drafted? 45? 50? Those 2 games were NFL junior games. Whatever you think about Dabo, Cade Klubnik, the running back situation, and the offensive line, Clemson's front 7 is an NFL front 7. LSU's defense, 7, 8 NFL players there. Ohio State's defense, 8 NFL players. Texas defense, 8, 9 NFL players. I am not surprised at all that the offenses and the quarterbacks and the running games and the passing games and the points and all that were low in those 2 games. Week 1, knowing that defenses are normally ahead of offenses, when you have a big matchup early in the season like that, coaches tend to be overly conservative. Go back and look at the Georgia-Clemson game from last year in week 1. What was the score at halftime? 3-0? Or something like this happens a lot when you have 2 high-level teams. For those of y'all that gamble and bet, college and NFL, what's the average over-under in college football? 55, 60 points. That's your average over-under in college. What's the average over-under in the NFL? 42. The better the teams are in general overall, the lower points you tend to see. In other words, Jeremiah Smith is still an NFL player, even though he was dog shit yesterday and had like 6 drops in the first half. I had to check. I thought he had a Georgia helmet on. He was dropping so many passes. He's an NFL player right now. Carnell Tate, NFL player right now. These offenses are going to be Ryan Wingo, the wide receiver for Texas, NFL player. Clemson's got 2 NFL wide receivers. LSU's probably got 4 NFL wide receivers. Like, these are still going to be good offenses over the course of the season. Well, LSU, Texas, and Ohio State, I'm confident will have good offenses over the course of the season. Clemson's got to figure some things. That running game for Clemson is really bad. I don't know if that can be fixed. The offensive line was terrible, and you can put Walter Payton and Barry Sanders back there. If that offensive line don't get better, it ain't going to matter. But anyway, Colorado, your season is over. Let's move on. How about, this is rare. This is super fucking rare. Did I not? Okay, I did. This is super fucking rare. This is a rare instance here on a Your Season is Over video where 99.999999% of the people on the planet, but definitely 99.99% of the people watching this video love this. UCLA got sodomized on national television last night by Utah. Now, while people don't necessarily hate UCLA, Southern Cal fans maybe, UCLA doesn't get a lot of hate. But there ain't a college football fan on the planet outside of whatever UCLA fans might exist and Nico's dad that didn't want to see Nico lose. And not only did he lose, he was terrible. He was absolutely terrible. Utah beat the soul out of UCLA 43-10. This was a mismatch physically and talent-wise, too. Utah revamped their team through the portal, which is a little unusual for them, but they brought in a new quarterback from the portal and they brought his offensive coordinator in. And Utah might be a little bit better than I thought they were. And that's maybe something you can look at coming out of week one. Instead of trying to draw like hard conclusions, like, okay, this team lost, they're terrible, they're going to win $1 million. Or this team won, they're great, they're going $1 million. Or no, maybe it's better or easier or to go, okay, I thought this, and this about these group of teams, and then go, okay, this team's probably a little better than I thought. This team's probably a little worse than I thought, and kind of build and go from there. Utah would fall into the category of they're probably going to be a little bit better than I thought. I think I had them at 7-5 or 8-4. The Big 12 was so wide open, they may win the damn thing. They're probably the second best Big 12 team I've seen so far early in the season. Talk more about that in a minute when we get to the best teams I've seen. But Utah beat them bad, and they look good doing it. Nico, 11 of 22, 50% completion percentage for 136 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He did run for 47 yards. But, boy, he is going to be a poster child. I wouldn't be surprised if every program, every team in the country hangs a picture of Nico up in their player lounge or something as a cautionary tale to players on their own team that, hey, the grass ain't always greener, bud. What is Joel Klatt's fixation with Nico, by the way? Does he just hate Tennessee or something? I said nobody wanted to see Nico do good. Joel Klatt has made it like his personal mission, like he's on a crusade to like prove to everybody that Nico didn't do anything wrong and he's in the right and Tennessee's in the wrong, and they put out fake propaganda about Nico. What is the deal with that? Bro, nobody likes what Nico did, and we're glad that he's losing. We're glad he's on a terrible team. I'm glad he had a terrible stat line. And, like, every team in the country should hang a picture of Nico up in their players' rounds or their locker room and go, look, I'm all for you doing the right thing and doing what's best for you as a player, but be careful. You could end up like Nico, stuck in the wilderness on a team that nobody cares about, that's way worse than the team you left, that has a coaching staff that's not nearly as good offensively as the coaching staff you left. It's just a mind-boggling fuck-up that Nico either chose to do himself or let himself get talked into by family and agents. But he has stepped on the world's biggest rake of all time and cracked himself right in the middle of his Polynesian head or whatever the fuck. And I rarely root against individual players because there are rarely individual players that I don't like for one reason or another. Baker Mayfield was one. I did not like Baker Mayfield. I rooted against him. Josh Rosen, who remembers that fucking clown? Wasn't he also at UCLA, by the way? Fuck Josh Rosen. Fuck Nico. And now that I think about it, I do hate UCLA. Fuck UCLA. Their season was over before it started. There was about 45 people at that game. Imagine you're Nico You've been in Knoxville for a couple of years, 100,000 people in the stands. You go on a road game to Vandy, it's sold out 65,000. You go on a road game to Arkansas, it's sold out 70,000. Bryant Denny, 100,000 stadium, 100,000. You go on the road to Athens, it's 95,000. And then you leave all that behind, plus the coaching staff and the great offense and all that crap. And you go to UCLA to get your ass beat in front of 45 people. They had to put a tarp over the upper deck of the stadium because they didn't sell any of the seats. There was during the third quarter, Utah was kicking an extra point after scoring yet another touchdown, and they had a camera angle of the extra point from the opposite end zone. So you were looking all the way down the field into the other end zone. You could literally count the number of people that were in the lower level right behind the end zone. Pitiful. I hope UCLA goes 0-1,000,000, and I hope Nico has a terrible year. Sorry, if that makes me a bad person, then type about it. But there you go. That's your season is over list. Clemson, Colorado, Boise State, Alabama, UCLA, and Texas. Sorry for your loss, dummies, but your season is over. Let's move along to something a little bit different here. Most impressive teams early in the college football season. Not the best teams. I'm not saying I think these are the best teams. I'm saying, based on a combination of factors, including what I thought about them ahead of time, what I think about them now after seeing them play 1 or 2 games in some cases, and how good I think they have looked. So these are the 2 teams I watched so far, and I went, wow. You gotta give them some credit. Number 1, Kansas. Kansas has destroyed 2 nobodies, to be fair, 2 complete nobodies. But boy, they look good. Jalen Daniels is the best college football player I've seen play this year. And I've seen Ohio State. I've seen Clemson. I've seen Alabama. I've seen LSU. I've seen Texas. I've seen Georgia. I've seen Penn State. Oregon played. We've seen Arizona State. We've seen Michigan. We've seen a lot of these teams. Jalen Daniels early. I'm not predicting Jalen Daniels to win the Heisman. That's not what I'm saying. He's the best player I've seen play so far, and Kansas is one of the most impressive teams I've seen. Now, they got to stay healthy. Talked about this after week 0. Got to stay healthy. They don't have depth at all. They are 1 or 2. So Kansas is 1 or 2 injuries at Kansas could be the difference between 10-2 and playing for the Big 12 title and 5-6 and needing to win their last game to get bowl eligible. They got to stay healthy. But holy shit, they look good. And they beat the soul out of somebody again yesterday. And the other team that we got to give credit to as much as we don't want to is Florida State. We were all wrong. All of us. Outside of a handful only of Florida State fans. The majority of Florida State fans that I talked to this offseason expected to lose this game. They were hoping to maybe keep it closer than people thought. That was a realistic expectation. Florida State not only kept the game closer than people thought, they absolutely dominated. Both sides of the ball, both lines of scrimmage. They had better quarterback play, obviously. They looked more motivated, more prepared. They looked better coached. They were definitely more excited to get out there and play. They were the more physical team by a mile. This wasn't a fluky win where a weird, blocked punt led to a touchdown. It was nothing. It was the better team won. And the better team was Florida State. Back to the theme. I'm trying to be careful about the overreactions here. And so am I going to move Florida State into my top 5? No, but they're going to be ranked. And they should be ranked in everybody's ranking. They looked good. Where the overreaction you need to be careful is we don't, what is Alabama? Is this a Georgia Tech, Florida State situation from last year in reverse? Florida State was ranked in the top 10 last year, ended up going 2-10. I don't think Alabama's going 2-10. The point I'm making is it could turn out that Alabama's just fucking terrible, right? Georgia Tech beat Florida State last year in week 0. Florida State was in the top 10. Oh my God, Georgia Tech must be amazing. No, Georgia Tech went 7-6. So, do I think Florida State's going 1,000,000 and winning a natty? No. Do I think they can potentially compete in the ACC? From what I saw yesterday, yeah. I still like Louisville. I still like Georgia Tech. I still like Clemson. SMU, I'm kind of down on. I tell you what, right now, I would move Florida State ahead of SMU in the ACC pecking order. You know, you got Clemson, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Miami. We haven't talked about because they haven't played. They play tonight. So we'll see what they look like, right? Carson Beck, quarterback. But Florida State and Kansas have been impressive. I mean, it's one in Florida State's case, it's one game, but it was, you have to admit, it was impressive. Heisman, if I was in charge of the Heisman and I had to give it away right now today, which I don't, I'd give it to Jalen Daniels. Do I think he's going to win the Heisman at the end of the year? Probably not. It's probably going to be one of the big name people that didn't have a great day yesterday, whoever that might be, Jeremiah Smith or Jeremiah Love plays tonight, the running back for Notre Dame. Boy, I tell you this, as bad as Cade Klubnik looked yesterday, if Clemson's not going to be able to run the ball and Cade Klubnik has to throw it 45 times a game and they can get the pass protection figured out against some lower level ACC teams, he might still put up monster numbers. Anyway, but Jalen Daniels, if you had to give the Heisman away right now, it's not even close. It would go to Jalen Daniels and nobody else would even be in the conversation. The Juice Poot special, which he's supposed to do his show at 8 o'clock at night. Now I see he's doing it at 1 o'clock today. It's because I keep ruining it. All last year, I came on here on Sundays and told you exactly what Juice Poot was going to talk about on his Sunday show, which is easy to figure out. Well, he announced today he's moving his Sunday show up to 1 o'clock to preempt me. What's he doing? Leave me alone, Juice Poot. But of course, you know who Juice Poot's going to coddle tonight, don't you? Top of his list, and we haven't talked about this yet, even though we're about to, Nebraska. Now, Nebraska won, but boy, they look bad. They look really bad. I thought I was high on Nebraska because I had them at 8-4, potentially 9-3, being like a version of last year's Illinois, coming up like a game short of the playoffs, but having a really good year. And I thought that was being generous. Well, Juice Poot comes out and announces to the world that Nebraska's a playoff team and is going to make the playoffs. And then they come out against a horrible Cincinnati team and looked really bad. Now, they survived and won the game, but Raiola didn't look great. He looks unsure of himself, didn't look confident. He's got a weird sort of throwing motion, and I'm not an X's and O's guy. I don't talk about a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm more of a watch and react guy. But when I watch Raiola, my reaction is, what is he doing with his arm? So I don't know what's going on with that, but they didn't look nearly as good as even I thought they would look. So Josh Pate, having predicted that they make the playoffs, is going to come on today and tell everybody to calm down. Nebraska's going to be fine. Early game jitters, blah, blah, whatever excuses he comes up with to make himself feel better about the fact that he actually picked that group of deadbeats to make the playoffs. What else is Juice Poot going to do? Bama. He picked Bama. Juice Poot had a bad weekend. He picked Bama to win the SEC and win the national title. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? You know, Josh Pate is trolling y'all, right? He looks at his analytics on YouTube or whatever, and he goes, "Oh, there's the viewership has dropped in the state of Alabama. Let's pick them to win the Natty. That'll bring the viewers back. No one's watching the show from Nebraska. Let's pick Nebraska to make the playoff. You know, that kind of thing." But yeah, so he's going to have to come on tonight and convince himself and y'all that Alabama is still okay and they're going to be fine. And Kalen DeBoer is great and Ty Simpson's still in a high level QB and the defense will get it figured out. And I have to do all that. And he'll coddle Texas and Clemson just because that's his whole shtick. He casts a wide net, and whatever fan bases are down bad the most, whichever fan base happens to be in a bad way based on how they played that weekend, whether they lost or just won but didn't look good, that's who he then comes on and coddles. You know, "Oh, don't worry, you'll be fine, blah, 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 blah." So that's what he'll do. You already know it's the same thing every week. Whoever loses, that's what he talks about. What about a paper plate special? We're going to do this every week. New segment. It's going to be the paper plate special. It'll feature a coach, a team, a player, something that was just really bad that stood out to me. Right? And the paper plate special, you know, instead of showing up to play a football game, you show up, you slide a stack of paper plates out to the 50-yard line, you drop your drawers, and you take a giant runny doo-doo right in the middle of it in front of, you know, the God and your parents and everybody else watching on TV, instead of doing what you're supposed to do. The paper plate special this week, high-level quarterbacks and offenses in general in the high-level games. I enjoy a good defensive game. I don't mind that. But let it be a good defensive game, like specifically because the defenses are playing good. And they were, like Ohio State and Texas defenses played good, but the offenses were just bad. Like Jeremiah Smith dropped 4 or 5 passes. Who saw that coming? Cade Klubnik looked like a first-year starter. Nussmeier didn't look much better for the majority of the game. There was no running game at all between those 4 teams, Ohio State, Texas, LSU, and Clemson. Durham, I thought, did okay for LSU. I really like him, by the way, that running back for LSU. But, like, the offense was just non-existent in those games. And I could go on and on. The Georgia Tech-Colorado game. I mean, there was just a lot of games that had NFL scores. 20 teams in the 20s. Offense down bad in week 1 of college football. Were there teams that scored a bunch of points? Yes. But it tended to be the Georgia versus Marshall, the Florida versus Long Island, just the games no one cared about or watched. The high-level games, where's the offense, man? Paper plate special. These offenses just took a giant dump instead of coming out and entertaining us like they were supposed to do. Kind of makes me mad. Who won and looked bad, though? Let's not say they look bad. These teams won, but they didn't look as good or as impressive as my preseason thoughts about them indicated that maybe they would be. Nebraska 20-17 is just not good. Just not good against a bad Cincinnati team. Raiola, 42 pass attempts. The whole thing with Nebraska has been, what's their identity? They lost their identity in that higher. Are you going to throw the ball 42 times a game? Come on, man. What are y'all doing? This shit don't make no sense. Wake Forest beat Kennesaw State 10-9. When they told me that, I thought it was a baseball. I thought baseball was in the spring. Kennesaw State just became an FBS team like yesterday. I mean, shout out to Kennesaw State. I mean, hell, I even have the helmet. Nobody hates Kennesaw State, but 10-9? Come on, Wake Forest. What is that? NC State 24-17 over East Carolina. Does that really surprise me? I mean, I'm off the Dave during training, and everyone else should be too. Rutgers 34-31 over Ohio. Not Ohio State. Not Miami of Ohio. The Ohio Bobcats or whatever it is. Big Ten avoids disaster there. Auburn 38-24 over Baylor. Auburn is the team that's getting too much credit this week. I was not impressed with what I saw from Auburn. Did they win the game? Yeah. Was it a Power 4 opponent? Yeah. Did they get credit for scheduling that, going on the road and winning? Yeah. But boy, some people need to calm down in their praise of Auburn. Auburn gave up almost 600 yards of offense to something called Baylor. A team with a defensive head coach and Dave Aranda. The defense was not good at all in this game for Auburn. Jackson Arnold. People are going, oh my God, I knew it. He really is a good quarterback. Hugh Freeze is back to being a genius again. He couldn't throw the ball to save his fucking life. He could not throw the ball to save his life. What did y'all see that I didn't see? Auburn had like 108 yards passing in this game in 2025. You say, oh yeah, but Jackson Arnold ran all over and Auburn had 400 yards rushing or whatever it was. Yeah, you know why? There were a handful of designed runs for Jackson Arnold. The majority of his rushing attempts and his rushing yards came on broken fucking plays where Baylor just couldn't tackle him. Auburn's pass protection in this game was the worst I saw outside of Clemson's. Clemson's was worse, but Clemson was playing LSU. I don't know if you know this or not, but LSU has a way better front seven than Baylor. Auburn could not protect Jackson Arnold to save their life. Jackson Arnold would drop back to throw. Immediately, he would be under pressure. And to his credit, like a magician, he somehow would get loose and run for 20 yards. That's great, and that's a positive of Jackson Arnold. He did run the ball well, but you have to look into why. There wasn't 25 designed runs for Jackson Arnold. He ran the ball a bunch because they couldn't pass protect, and so he would drop back to throw. If his first read wasn't there, he'd take off running. If he was under any pressure at all, he'd take off running. I was not impressed with what I saw from Auburn. I was not impressed with Jackson Arnold at all, outside of his ability to run around. And he's not going to beat, and Auburn's not going to beat, a single SEC defense, legit SEC defense, when they're that one-dimensional. It's not going to happen. They better get something figured out with that passing game because they've got amazing wide receivers. Cam Coleman and company are unbelievable wide receivers. But they were on the team last year, and they didn't do anything because the quarterback couldn't get them the ball. And it looks to me like that's the case again right now. So I don't know. I'm in the minority here. Again, most I've seen seem to, oh my God, Auburn was great. I didn't see that. Michigan 34-17 over New Mexico. Bryce Underwood for his first start, he did okay. That's not why I'm saying they won and didn't look good or disappointed me a little. The defense wasn't nearly what I thought it would be for Michigan. I thought they would keep the same high-level defense they had last year. That defense is the only reason they won 8 games last year. Their offense was horrendous. Now, the passing game in particular yesterday looked better, and Justin Haynes had a good – boy, Alabama sure could use Justin Haynes, couldn't they? Huh? Yeah. He transferred out of there. He's at Michigan. I think he just scored another touchdown right now while I was recording this. But I thought the defense has taken a step back at Michigan. Now, they got a huge game next week on the road at Oklahoma. See how that goes. But a little disappointed in Michigan defensively. Kansas State beat North Dakota 38-35. This is one of the things, the most wrong I've ever been. I had Kansas State in my top 15. They were my pick to win the Big 12. And while they won yesterday, they lost week 0 to Iowa State. They looked absolutely horrendous yesterday. I am completely off the Kansas State train, and I am thinking about unranking them altogether when I update my rankings tomorrow on Monday. They are extremely disappointing. I'm complete. They're no different than NC State to me now. I'm just never picking them to do anything again. Indiana 27-14 over Old Dominion. Google me. Yeah, I Googled you, Curt Cignetti, and it said you beat Old Dominion 27-14. Curt Cignetti is the Texas fans of head coaches. You need to shut the fuck up too. I can't wait till they start losing games, and it's coming. Indiana's going to be a borderline bowl team. All right, there's a list of teams a mile long that won and looked good because they played terrible teams. Mississippi State, Texas Tech, Tennessee. Let's talk about Tennessee. Tennessee 45-26 over Syracuse. G5 Joey played good. I mean, come on. I mean, we all might have wanted him to play bad, but he played good. Tennessee ran the ball, too. They were almost 50-50. Tennessee's offense was yesterday, passing and rushing yards. I think they had about 250 passing and about 250 rushing, if I'm remembering right, but it was very close to 50-50. Now, the defense it wasn't as good as I thought. So the offense was better for Tennessee than I thought it would be, especially week 1 was so much brand new. Remember, they got not only a new quarterback in G5 Joey, but they lost their top 3 wide receivers from last year and Dylan Sampson, the leading rusher in the SEC, all gone. Basically a brand new offense for Tennessee. And they put up 45 on Syracuse. Syracuse was a 10-win team last year. Don't know how good they are this year. Again, the overreactions from week 1. What does this mean? Does this mean Tennessee is going to score 45 points a game? No. Tennessee did this last year. They scored 100 on NC State. Then they scored 100 on all these FCS and Group of 5 teams they played. Then the SEC schedule started, and they scored 24 points a game. So, I'm not drawing any conclusions down the road on what this means, but yesterday I thought Tennessee looked good. Texas Tech beat a nobody, blew them out. Iowa State blowout. Ole Miss blowout. Oklahoma blowout over Illinois State. John Mateer, Moneyline Mateer. He had a good game, a really good game. Check the numbers. They were astounding. SMU blew out East Texas A&M. Okay, great. Florida beat Long Island. What was that? 55-0, I think. I didn't. To be fair to the Florida fans, I didn't watch any of this game. Okay, because it was Long Island. I'm not going to watch it. And I'm assuming they must have took DJ Lagway out really, really early in this game because DJ Lagway had like 120 yards passing. But Florida State destroyed them. This game was never in doubt, never in question. The defense was lights out. I know it was Long Island, but again, you win 55-0. What else can you do? So, they're on the one but look good list. Oregon blew somebody out. Penn State. Georgia blew Marshall out. UNLV. UNLV's 2-0. 2-0, and Boise State looks like hot trash. Looks like my UNLV Rebels might be headed to the playoffs. A lot of y'all threw UNLV away a week ago. Where you at now? I don't know. No idea. South Florida, talked about them. Missouri beat somebody 60-6. Illinois. Kansas 46-7 over Wagner. Jalen Daniels is a machine. Pitt beat Duquesne 61-9. Navy blew out. West Virginia, Rich Rod's homecoming at West Virginia. They won 45-3 over Robert Morris, whoever that is. Is that an individual or a school? I don't know. Louisville blew out Eastern Kentucky. Who is that? They blew somebody out 51-17. Arkansas blowout win over Alabama A&M. You get the gist here. Iowa, Virginia, James Madison, Vandy. Southern Cal 73-13 over Missouri State. BYU 69-0 over Portland State. These are, high-level teams playing low-level garbage, and they all won by 40 or 50 points. So congratulations, they did what they were supposed to do on that. What else do we want to talk about before we end this? Here shit show? Is there anything else I failed to mention? Here's some notes I made sort of while I was watching the games. This is a sort of a peek inside Uncle Lou's stream of consciousness here. Let's see. Georgia Tech 3 turnovers, first 3 possessions, but only losing 7-0. Yep, I did remember to mention that. Army lost again. Damn. What is this? Oh, Auburn, no turnovers. I forgot to mention that when I talked about the Auburn game. That's a positive. I mean, I may not be as high coming out of that win over Baylor on Auburn as some other people are, but no turnovers is a big deal for Auburn because they had a big problem with that last year, as did Jackson Arnold. So that's good, no turnovers. But the other notes here says can't throw the ball, no pass protection. Talked about that. UNLV won again. Talked about that. Boise State lost. Talked about that. Arch Manning has more commercials than he does completions. God damn. Somebody in the comment section typed that out yesterday, and I said, I gotta steal that. Arch Manning's got more commercials than he does completions. That's funny. Texas inside the 10 twice and got no points. We talked about that. The only thing Texas has is a hat that's too big for their head. I think I mentioned that too. What else we have? Oh, is Josh Heupel built like a bagel? Is that an expression? Somebody said that yesterday. I didn't come up with that myself. Somebody in this comment said Josh Heupel's built like a bagel. Funniest thing I've heard. Is that an expression and I just never heard it before? Josh Heupel is built like a bagel. All right. Anyway, there you go. Your season is over week 1. I'll be live today at 3 o'clock for Virginia Tech and South Carolina right here on YouTube. Come hang out. We'll watch that game. And then tonight in prime time, Notre Dame and Miami should be a great one. That's going to be a Patreon stream. There's a link to my Patreon page in the description of this video and every video. Click the link to the Patreon page. Get signed up. And about 15 minutes before the Notre Dame-Miami game starts tonight, you will see a link posted on my Patreon page. Just click that link. It'll take you to the live stream. We'll hang out and watch Notre Dame versus Miami in prime time. Tomorrow, Monday, I will update my top 25 list, and then we will watch TCU North Carolina tomorrow night at 8. Tuesday, I will do a way shorter version of this video where I talk about the Sunday and Monday games. All right. It's been a great week 1 so far. I'm wore out, not going to lie. I live streamed for 15 hours yesterday. I'm an absolute animal. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed the video. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you at 3 o'clock for South Carolina, Virginia Tech. Have a good morning.